in history you want to go, but certainly prehistory. But I picture it as Neanderthal actually coming originally from Africa and living on fruit. But then being pushed into colder climates by the Homo sapien that takes over, the sort of ancient ancestor of and what the Celts are. That push into Europe, and Homo sapiens I picture as managing vegetables rather better than and vegetation rather better than Neanderthal, and both are adjusting to hunting. The Neanderthal pushed further into the colder climates, the Central Asia and so on. The Homo sapiens spreading through Europe and Indian subcontinent and the Far East. So they have an O blood group, which is, more tolerant of meat, and manages with vegetables rather more than fruit. But there's always a great mix going on. It's not, one pure blood replacing another. It's well, I suppose I picture it as the dominant male taking the best female that's available, and the children are the toss of a coin, really. Yeah, but in that probability situation, some children fare better than others in the environment they find themselves in, and those that are weaker are actually pushed to the colder and less food-bearing climates, and it might be you're forced to be dependent on dairy and meat and just about no fruit and just about no vegetables. And then these are the Central Steppe people. But of course their familiarity with animals for manufacturing the grass that is the only thing that really does grow. And their herds give them the necessity of mobility, and of course in the end the horse. And the horseman is devastating in battle. So he sweeps back against the Europeans and South Europeans, the North, first of all, because he's if it gets to the time of places like Persia, Babylon and so on, he's blocked from pushing down into India and pushing across the Mediterranean, but he can push across Northern Europe, and does. And the mix that then results, which is well, the dominant male is the Norseman, the Viking, which is really the steppe people. They have an amazing principle of loyalty and integrity, which dominates their religion. You could say it's a Persian religion, it's borrowed from there. That's the sort of seat of the culture, really. But they're a wild people, you can't tame them. And they're fierce. But they're ever the kickback on Western religion. When it gets to the Rome, it's very hard to contain them. The Roman army becomes Mithraic, which is Persian. The Persian culture itself succumbs to their invasion from time to time. And sometimes actually dominating the hierarchy. It is Central Steppe people, Scythian if you like, or whatever you like to call them, the Yamnaya, arching round Persia into, as I say, becoming the Vikings and so on. And then of course even sweeping down to the Roman Empire from the north rather than from the east, so that the Western Roman Empire falls because of them, and because of the peoples that they push, many of which seek refuge en masse in the Roman society, but many of which also just attack it and take what they can. And there are people that are used to taking what they can and very mobile. And so we have it that Constantine saw Persia as his enemy, so he shifts his capital closer to the boundary, Constantinople, and Western Rome, in its divisiveness of such a shift of capital, Rome still feels it's important, is a centre, and now Constantinople as well. So Rome falls, sadly not supported by the Eastern Empire. The Eastern Empire doesn't fall until, gosh, what is it? I think it's the Turks, isn't it? How many hundreds of years later? Hundreds and hundreds of years later. Amazing history. So we've got O blood group. Not sure if there's anything before that. But the O blood group can manage vegetation as well as fruit. I've got a feeling there's a fruit diet somewhere. I wonder what the Neanderthal blood group is really. Perhaps it's O, but perhaps it's something earlier. I don't know. And well, those that are in Europe, they adjust to meat in winter to help subsidise. You slaughter your surplus cattle in the autumn because you can't feed them during the winter, really, very hard. And later you might manage to realise you can salt the stuff down and keep it that way, but it doesn't last, So you might hunt for what's available, and there's a lot available to begin with. Even in medieval times, you hunt rabbits and that. I think rabbit may have been a really serious source of dense food, protein in winter. So you get the O blood group is very accommodating of a pretty mixed diet and can manage the meat and so on. And well, it's still pretty touch and go survival in such a cold climate. And you find that grain will store in winter. Oh, now that's valuable, isn't it? I mean, if you've got grain you can eat in winter, you can store that. So you start to become farmers. And they're an A blood group. They adjust their blood such that they can handle the grain quite well. And so the European becomes a farmer. I mean, he's relying on the woodland and, you know, the wild as well. He's still hunting rabbits and that in winter. And grain is going to grow. And of course you're majorly getting a sedentary population now. Because if you grow the grain, you want to protect the store of food. And to do that, you need, well, cities really, town walls. Protect yourself from other people that would steal your fruits of your labour. And your diet's adjusting accordingly in your blood group. And they push on other peoples that, you know, were pushed out to the colder climates still, and the desolate climates in the sense of the steppes. And they become more dependent on dairy and hunting still, of course. But, yeah, they keep cattle, so they will eat meat and they will eat dairy. But of course, when they got the horse, they're mobile, more mobile than wandering shepherds on foot. And these people strike back now because they're so, well, such mighty warriors. And as I say, they arch round sort of the blockage like Persian Empire, which is difficult for them to defeat. They do, but I mean it takes an awful lot. Especially as they tend to be a disorganized people. They're tribal. I mean, intensely loyal to their tribe, identifying with strongly. So you know, you get the, you know, the European businessman. My word is my bond. Well, it's Scythian. It's central step. It's the integrity of the central step people, the warrior on horseback, values three things: his integrity, his horse, and his ability to be an archer on horseback. And that's everything to his culture. It's not a love culture, you see, it's an honour. Patriotism is going to become, isn't it? And it's that which influences the other nations to this patriotic type of approach. So although the Persian greatly influences its closer step people, and they pick up the religion. The religion of Persia too is majorly affected by this loyalty principle. So we have a religion of law, not love, you see. And it's very important to these people coping on the central steps. And it suits, of course, anyone building an empire too, that law is the way to go, because, well, love would be intensely personal, and power elites don't want that. They want all personal relationships to be secondary to obedience to the state. And of course, in that regard, it's the farming community that is the foundation of state, because it has surplus which can be creamed off and stored and traded with. Whereas the hunter and dairyman of the central steppe, I mean, that's not really a wealth to trade much. So he just becomes a robber against the sedentary people that farm. A robber on a grand scale that sweeps in from time to time and takes what he wants, including the women, of course, and the mixes accordingly. Both the blood mix as well. But out of the mix comes an amazing ability for the right population to evolve for the region it's in, and so on. Well, it's something of that. It's very fuzzy thinking. It's on pretty slender evidence. And it's not of fundamental importance to us, because what really is important to us is what works. Does the diet work for where you are, given the blood group you seem to have inherited? Does the religious dominance of loyalty and integrity and faithfulness dominate more, or does a love relationship? If you think of it in a very simplistic way, the great lovers of the world have been pictured by us as being in the warmer climates, the Mediterranean and India. And the dominance has tended to be, well, hordes of Central Asia, Vikings, Norse, the Normans that, battle against an earlier set of Norse-type people, the Saxons and the Danes. Then we got the Normans. All we know is that it's likely to be a complex interrelationship of what's going on, and climate change might well be a precipitating trigger that, suddenly forces whole populations to attempt migration, which also frightens others to death, and they flee ahead of them. And you get the Celts living in northern Scotland. They're pushed that way when wave of migrants come into England and push people to the Welsh hills and across to Ireland. And yep, things might settle for a while, and then you get a wave of severe cold weather for several, even 100 years, so a mini ice age sort of thing. At least a drop in temperature such that climate change shifts your ability to survive the winter. And, even the sea people, why are they attacking the eastern Mediterranean and taking all the coast and settling in the delta, whether Pharaoh really wants it or not? They're not just coming as warriors on ships, they're coming with their whole family. Their whole culture is coming, which suggests they're being pushed. Whether it's rising seas in the Black Sea, and they're really a Viking people that have got the transport of a sort, I don't mean pure Viking, but that sort of person that is really Northern Europe, or whether they're from the Western Mediterranean and something's happening there. Perhaps something's pushing into what we think of as Spain and so on. And it makes the populations flee ahead of it across the Mediterranean because they've got ships to do it, boats, and then they just keep coming, and the established cities can't do anything about it. They had a great trading system between them, a wealth that was a sort of precursor to globalism, really, but is extremely vulnerable to marauding groups, whether they be on horseback in the north or from the north, or whether they be by ship to your coast. Yeah. Well, as I say, it's fuzzy thinking and not as important as what actually works. When it comes to diet, according to your environment and your body type and so on, blood type and so forth. And how it got there is, well, all a bit of a mystery, but it might be explained in some such way as this. But the explanation is not as important as finding out what works. And that's true too with your religion, or your lack of it even. You might have a lifestyle that is a principle rather than religion, which I think in a way the Central Step people were more like that. And on the other hand, your spiritual life might be a consequence of a land of plenty and good climate, and you're not battling with the cold and shortage of food, really. So you have a more laissez-faire and settled family structure, which values loving relationships rather than military loyalty and bravery, which I see as a sort of more Mediterranean view of what religion should be. And we get something like Israel, which is not just between superpowers, it's between East and West, with the East being the integrity, law and principle and keeping your word, truth and honor, and the West being family relationship, love, peace, really, establishment. So, you know, you can see it in religion, where the Old Testament is heavily influenced originally, I think, from the Central Steppes of Asia, and the Jesus story, a Mediterranean, Egyptian, Greek view of Egyptian, as I say, more of a love than a warring bravery type religion. The Old Testament God is a God of war, and the Jesus God is a heavenly dad. How lovely. Thank you, heavenly dad. Yeah, I look at my mum and dad, red-haired, dad, black hair. Both look suspiciously Germanic, Scythian, central step people. Mum, vicious temper, or dad, temper too, oh goodness. Yeah. Dad, absolute man of principle, my word is my bond. Mum, with her background, of course, of being the poor class, the victims of this sort of way of running a country, and being a mum and not loving dad, swinging strongly to loving, flat out son, Marshall. So God has it for Marshall that he's incredibly privileged. It has the wealth and security of dad as a background, and the love and devotion of mum as his foreground up close. Wow. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.